So, thought I'd hop on to some BF4, play some of the new Naval Strike DLC, and give you guys my thoughts on how the update has affected the game. So, not only have we gotten a whole bunch of new weapons and 4 new maps, we've also gotten some balancing tweaks, some netcode improvements, and things like that. So, first of all, the maps. So, you've got Lost Islands, Nansha Strike, Wavebreaker, and Operation Mortar. So these are all basically different rehashes of the Paracel Storm map. They are a lot of fun. I enjoy them quite a bit. They are sort of more suited for very large open combat engagements. So if you're used to that, if you enjoy that, if you like playing Conquest large, things like that, you're going to love these maps. These maps are also very much meant to be played with the new mode called Carrier Assault. Now, if you guys are familiar with Battlefield 2142, you know that Carrier Assault is basically the same thing as Titan Assault or Titan mode from that game. Basically, you've got these 2 aircraft carriers. You need to capture points. As long as you hold those points, this constant barrage of missiles are fired at the enemy carrier, and vice versa if the enemy has those points. And once you've gotten enough hull damage on the enemy carrier, you can infiltrate it, and you basically have little like boarding party like raids, and it's really cool. It's an awesome mode. It sort of shifts from this open conquest to more of a rush game mode, which I think is awesome. I am all for something that's sort of new. In a lot of games, no matter what shooter you're playing, a lot of times you join a certain map or you join a certain server and you're playing Conquest in Battlefield, or you're playing Search and Destroy in COD. You know, all these different game modes, they're very sort of cut and dry. However, the thing that seems very innovative about Carrier Assault, or about, I guess, Titan mode when it was introduced originally, is the fact that you basically have 2 game modes. There's this progression. It's not as linear as most modes are. You start the game and you're playing in a conquest map, and all of a sudden, boom, you transition into a completely different mode. So that means maybe your weapon set isn't going to be as useful. If you're using a sniper during the beginning of the round, and now all of a sudden you're trying to infiltrate the enemy carrier, maybe you should switch on over to engineer. I'm all for game modes that just switch things up. You know, it goes along with the whole mentality of Levolution and just sort of this transition mid-game from one thing to another, whether that be the actual physical map or, in this case, the mode that you're playing. I think that's awesome. I think that's going to bring something that just keeps the game a little bit more fresh. So, the new weapons. I've touched on a previous video on using the new assault rifle that's been introduced, the AR-160, which is a pretty versatile rifle. I've found it to be pretty fun to use. But you've also got a load of other things. You got the SR2, the AWS, the SR338, and the SW40. Now, some of these things I haven't had much of a go with, like the new sniper rifle and the revolver. However, I have had a lot of playtime with the AWS, the new light machine gun that's been introduced. Now, if you've been following Battlefield 4 at all lately, you'll know that the AWS has basically just been an OP powerhouse. It basically was using assault rifle rounds, yet you still had 100 rounds like a standard light machine gun. So it was a little bit ridiculous, to say the least. Luckily, I do think DICE has just released a server-side patch that fixes the problem, nerfs it quite a bit. I will be playing with it a little bit more just to see how much that nerf has affected the gun. I have a feeling it's still going to be a pretty viable weapon, even though it doesn't have that crazy intense damage model. Now, although I haven't used much of the sniper rifle, I've used it a little bit. And basically, from what I've seen, it's sort of like a DMR, but not really. It takes about 3 shots to the body to take someone out, 2 shots if you hit one of those shots in the head. So this is basically a very similar model to the DMRs. However, the rate of fire I've found is much less. For example, when I'm using the M39 DMR, I have a very high rate of fire. I can take targets down in usually around 3 shots. Rarely it'll take 4. Usually it's about 3. So I'm a little bit puzzled right now. Why have they introduced a weapon that takes 3 shots but yet has a lower rate of fire than a DMR. I guess I'm just a little bit confused. Is this something that DICE meant to do before they updated DMRs? Is this sort of a weapon they had in place with those stats before? I'm not really sure. I mean, I could be mistaken in what I'm seeing, but that's what I've found, and I'm just a little bit confused. It is, of course, it's a pretty useful weapon, but really, if you want to use a semi-automatic sniper rifle or rifle that does good damage, I'd probably stick to the DMRs. Now, there's a whole bunch of other weapons, as I mentioned, but none of the rest of them really have anything that's sort of out of the ordinary. The SW40 is basically just a little revolver-like thing, and so you're basically going to still get a little bit of revolver delay as of now. That may be patched in the future, but I haven't found it to be super useful. It's basically just like the Rex or the Magnum. Not too much of a difference there. You've also got the SR2, which I find just to be another pretty vanilla PDW-like weapon. It doesn't bring too much new to the table, and that is about it for the weapons that have been introduced. You also have 2 new gadgets. You've got the anti-air mine, and you've got the M320 3GL, which basically is just a 3-barreled grenade launcher that does decreased damage than your regular M320. So, what does this really do? Well, from the beginning of Battlefield 4's launch, I felt that DICE's treatment of the attack helicopter, the scout helicopter, and the transport helicopter was pretty abysmal. The transport helicopter miniguns do little to no damage, but that actually was just fixed. They do a heck of a lot more damage now. The scout helicopter just could be taken out super easily, and the attack chopper also had basically the same problem, could be taken out super easily, and being a gunner was pretty much useless. Now they fixed some of the things. Being a gunner, you can actually now take out tanks with the help of the main pilot pretty easily with one strafe run. But there are still a lot of problems that are facing these helicopters. And so something that once again has puzzled me is, it's like DICE went in and was like, you know what? These helicopters, they're way too OP, okay? And people are using them. They're just getting crazy kill streaks, and this isn't what we want. Let's nerf the helicopters even more than they're already sucking. Let's nerf them even more. Let's give infantry a new way to take them out, which I guess they didn't think that having like 3 different type of lock-on missiles was enough. It's like, okay, let's put in something else into the game that auto locks onto helicopters and takes them out of the sky. Like DICE, what are you thinking? The helicopters need to be buffed, not nerfed. I don't know who's in charge of balancing over there, but it's like 2 steps forward and another step back. So I really hope that the anti-air mine isn't going to be used a whole bunch. I haven't seen people using it a whole bunch. Like maybe there's 1 or 2 guys on the whole server using it. So I'm glad that people are seeing that, it isn't really something you want to use a whole bunch. I mean, I guess if there's someone that's completely dominating in, one shop or another, you can just equip that and maybe take them out. If they're just sort of being a pest, or if they're completely destroying your team, I guess it gives you a tool to take them out. Like, I never think that you should just have something that you can give to a new player that just takes out a skilled player. Like, I think that isn't really rewarding the player that has a lot of skill. It's not rewarding him. It's rewarding, taking the cheap way out, which I'm not really for. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But also, there's been the amphibious hovercraft vehicle, which has been added to the game, which is basically just a cool little jet ski with a guy on the back that can go on land. Not too much new there. It is really useful in these maps, but it doesn't really bring anything super new. But it is cool. The maps that have been introduced are really fun, and there's a lot of sort of interactivity in them. For example, in one of the maps, you have these old cannons on the top of this fort that's on the top of this cliff. Lots of things on top of one another. But anyways, you've got these cannons. You can use them to shoot down infantry or boats or helicopters or all the above. They're just awesome. I love it. I love it. when game developers take something and they give you this interactivity that isn't really usually there. You walk up to something and you're like, oh, I wonder if this thing works, and then you press E or something and you can use it. Like, there's buttons in Battlefield 4 that you can press that'll cause levolution and things like that. I just always love the interactivity that DICE seems to put into their game. So I do think that's one step forward. One awesome thing that they've done with this game and with these maps is the interactivity, the planes and stuff, the levolution. It isn't game-breaking levolution. It's not like Siege of Shanghai where the map is completely changed and you can't go back, and now you've got this different map than what you started, which is cool, but sometimes it can get a little bit annoying. No, this levolution is a little bit more of aesthetic of levolution. Aesthetic levolution. I should coin that, but aesthetic levolution. Anyways, basically you've got things like Operation Dawnbreaker, where you sort of have this change from the sun rising into sort of this early morning map. And I think levolution like this is awesome. I think that if DICE takes this and in future maps they make something where maybe you start during the night and you can use like infrared night vision goggles or scopes, things like that, and it switches to daytime, I think that's awesome. I am waiting for the day when DICE finally makes a night to day or vice versa, day to night map. I think that would be absolutely amazing. So for things like that change the map, I'm all for, and I think that's really cool. But about the maps themselves, they seem to be balanced really well. They have a lot of little nooks and crannies that you can go find Easter eggs and things like that. So I think that's really neat. So basically, all in all, this DLC seems to bring a lot of neat things. Nothing that, really sucks hard like some things in the other previous DLCs. They're just sort of all around great maps. I will make one note though, which is I still haven't been able to scratch my itch for a good close quarters map. Battlefield 4, I know, isn't really catered towards a close quarters style of play. You have a few things like the shotguns, but the meta of the game isn't really focused on close quarters. It's a much more medium to long range game than Battlefield 3 ever was. Battlefield 3 was, I think, a little bit more of a close to medium range game. That's where you had most of your engagements. This game, it's a lot more open. There's a little bit less cover, and it's just a different meta. So I am still waiting to see if DICE is going to put in sort of a close quarters map, or really focus on a good close quarters sort of set or series of maps. I really would like that, and I'd like to see where that direction sort of takes them. I still am getting killed from behind cover when I am clearly on my screen. I can see that I'm behind cover, but I know that on my enemies, on their monitor, they're seeing me out in the open. That server side hit registration needs to be improved. It's still breaking it for me right now. I'm finding myself getting very angry at times because I'm getting killed when I know that I shouldn't be. So, other than that, I hope you guys have a great one. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time.